Okay, so you ready to dive into this?
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
It's kind of wild when you think about it. There's this place right in D.C. that prints over $500 million every single day.
$500 million in cash every day.
Yeah, it's crazy. But here's the thing that's just the physical stuff. Digitally, the amount of money out there grows by over $4 billion daily.
$4 billion. That's the real story here.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, right? Where does all this money actually come from? For people like us, where does it actually originate?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer is way more interesting than just thinking about printing presses. The real key is understanding how money is created in our modern economy.
And that's what we're going to unpack today, right? This idea of money creation.
We're going to go way back, long before dollar bills or credit cards even existed.
Back to the very beginning.
Exactly. We'll trace how the concept of money evolved over centuries.
From trading chickens to, tapping your phone to buy coffee.
Because understanding how money is created is fundamental to understanding how the economy works.
It's the engine that drives everything, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It affects prices, influences investments, impacts your personal finances. It's all connected.
And it all started with something much simpler. Imagine a world without money.
Think about it. You're a farmer who needs a new plow, right? And there's a blacksmith who happens to need some of your grain.
Right, but what if your harvest isn't ready yet?
Well, that's where trust comes in. You make an agreement, a promise to deliver the grain later in exchange for the plow now.
So that promise itself becomes a form of payment.
It's the very earliest form of credit, an IOU based on a relationship and trust.
I never thought about it like that before. It's amazing how those early forms of exchange really relied on personal connections.
They did. But as communities grew, these informal agreements became, less practical.
Less practical. Why?
Imagine that blacksmith needs new shoes, but the shoemaker doesn't need any grain. Your promise to pay the blacksmith later with grain isn't really helpful in that situation.
Ah, I see. It's like a chain reaction that breaks down. So how did they solve that?
That's when we start to see the emergence of what's called commodity money.
Commodity money. What's that?
Think of things that most people needed and valued, things like cattle, grain, or salt.
So instead of promising future grain, the farmer could pay the blacksmith directly with, say, a certain amount of grain.
Right, and the blacksmith could then use that grain to pay for the shoes or anything else they needed.
It makes sense. Everyone understands the value of a cow or a bag of grain.
Precisely. It had inherent value. But as you might imagine, it wasn't a perfect system.
What were the drawbacks?
Try carrying around enough cattle to buy a house, for instance.
Okay, yeah, that would be a problem. Not exactly practical for everyday transactions.
Not to mention things like grain could spoil.
Yeah.
You can't exactly split a cow in half to buy something small.
So commodity money worked for a while, but it had its limits.
As trade routes expanded and economies grew, people needed something more durable, portable, and universally accepted.
Something that wouldn't rot or require a whole herd of animals to make a purchase.
Enter gold and silver.
Ah, the shiny stuff.
Exactly. Precious metals solved a lot of the problems of commodity money. They were relatively scarce, held their value over time, and could be easily divided into coins.
That's why gold and silver became so important for trade, right?
Yeah.
They were like a global currency.
Precisely. But even with coins, transporting large amounts of wealth was still risky and inconvenient.
You're telling me. Imagine lugging chests of gold across the country. You'd be a target for every thief out there.
And that's where we see the beginnings of the banking system, or at least the early seeds of it.
So how did that come about?
In 17th century London, goldsmiths, who already had secure vaults for storing their own precious metals, started offering a new service.
What kind of service?
Safekeeping. People could deposit their gold coins with the goldsmith for safekeeping, and in return, they'd receive a receipt.
A receipt, so like a proof of ownership.
Exactly. These receipts were called promise notes, acknowledging that the goldsmith held a certain amount of gold for the depositor.
So the note itself wasn't valuable, it just represented a claim on the actual gold.
Right. But here's the fascinating part. People realized that carrying these notes around was much easier than lugging heavy gold coins.
I bet. Way more convenient. And less risky, too.
Absolutely. So instead of constantly going back to the goldsmith to exchange the notes for gold, people started trading the notes themselves.
So the promise note, That piece of paper effectively became a form of money.
It did, and this was a pivotal moment. The medium of exchange, that paper note, began to separate from the underlying commodity, the gold.
It was like money evolving, taking on a new form.
And it's here that the story takes another interesting turn. The goldsmiths noticed that not everyone who deposited gold came back to claim it all at the same time.
So they had all this gold just sitting in their vaults.
Exactly. And this gave them an idea, a rather clever one. They started issuing more promise notes than they had gold to back them up.
Wait, so they were essentially creating money out of thin air.
In a way, yes. They were issuing loans in the form of these extra promise notes, charging interest, and effectively creating money that didn't physically exist.
That's a pretty big leap, isn't it? From storing gold to creating money based on, well, the potential of that gold.
It was a revolutionary concept, and it's the foundation of how our modern banking system works.
So let me see if I understand this right. Let's say a goldsmith had 100 gold coins deposited in their vault. They could then issue promise notes, essentially loans, for, say, another 100 gold coins.
Precisely. And those new notes would circulate in the economy, even though there wasn't any additional physical gold to back them up.
It's like they doubled the amount of money in circulation with the stroke of a pen.
In essence, yes. But, as you can imagine, this system had a fundamental risk. If everyone who held those promise notes suddenly decided to redeem them for actual gold, the goldsmith wouldn't have enough.
It'd be like a bank run, right? Everyone panicking and trying to withdraw their money at the same time.
Exactly. That's the inherent fragility of what's called a fractional reserve system. Banks only hold a fraction of the money deposited and lend out the rest.
So it's a system built on trust, on the belief that not everyone will demand their money all at once.
Right. And if that trust erodes, the system can become very unstable.
Which makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We've moved from physical gold to digital entries in bank accounts, but the core principle remains the same.
The system we have today is still built on this idea of fractional reserves and creating money through lending.
So we've gone from bartering to goldsmiths, from paper notes to digital currencies. But why did this system of banks creating money through loans become the dominant model?
It's a great question. And to understand it, we need to think about the limitations of simply passing around a fixed amount of money in the economy.
You mean like if we just kept exchanging the same dollars back and forth?
Exactly. If money just circulates without any new money being created, economic growth can be stifled.
Why is that?
Imagine a simple scenario. There are 4 people in a community, and there's a total of $100 in circulation.
Okay, I'm following.
Now, as those 4 people trade goods and services, the money just changes hands. No new money is added.
Right, so the total amount stays the same.
Over time, some people will naturally end up with more money than others. Those with less might not have the funds to invest in new businesses or innovations.
It's like a game of musical chairs where someone's always left standing without a seat.
That's a great analogy, and it highlights a crucial point. Injecting new money into the system can actually stimulate economic activity.
It's like adding more chairs to the game,
Yeah.
giving everyone a chance to participate.
Precisely. When banks create new money through lending, they provide the fuel for businesses to expand, for new products to be developed, for the economy to grow.
So it's not just about individuals borrowing money to buy things. It's about the overall health of the economy.
Exactly. And this brings up an important misconception about banks. Many people think of them simply as places to store their money.
Like a safe deposit box for your cash.
Right. But in reality, banks do much more than that. When you deposit money in a bank, it's not like they're stashing your bills in a vault.
So what happens to it?
They're essentially borrowing it from you. Your deposit becomes a liability for the bank they owe you that money.
It's like those promise notes from the goldsmiths, but in digital form.
Precisely. And when a bank makes a loan, they're creating a new asset for themselves, the loan, and a new liability for the borrower.
And in that process, new money is created.
Right. Let's say a business takes out a loan to expand their operations. The bank doesn't take money from existing deposits to fund that loan. They simply credit the borrower's account with the loan amount, creating new digital money.
It's amazing how money can be created just like that, with a few keystrokes.
And when that loan is eventually repaid, the money is essentially destroyed. It's canceled out of the system.
So the bank's profit comes from the interest charged on the loan. They haven't lost any of the money that was already in circulation.
Exactly. It's a system that allows banks to profit while also playing a crucial role in facilitating economic activity.
It all ties together, doesn't it? From those early promises between farmers and blacksmiths to the complex world of digital finance.
It's a fascinating journey. And understanding how money is created helps us make sense of the forces that shape our economy.
It also helps us see the potential risks, like inflation. If too much money is created too quickly, it can lead to higher prices for everyone.
That's a key point. If the money supply grows faster than the production of goods and services, we have a situation where there's more money chasing the same amount of stuff.
Which inevitably leads to prices going up.
Exactly. And it's a delicate balance that central banks and governments try to manage.
Right. And speaking of governments, they play a huge role in this whole system.
Governments often spend more money than they take in through taxes. To cover those deficits, they issue bonds.
Government bonds, those are basically like IOUs, right? The government borrows money from investors and promises to pay it back with interest.
Exactly. And commercial banks, corporations, even foreign governments buy these bonds.
So it's another way that money is injected into the economy.
It is. And the issuance of these bonds contributes to the national debt.
And that debt ultimately has to be paid back by taxpayers.
It's a complex system with a lot of moving parts. But the key takeaway is that money creation isn't some magical process. It's driven by lending, government spending, and the interplay between banks and central banks.
So the next time you see a news report about the economy or interest rates, think about this process of money creation.
It's the foundation of how our financial world operates.
Yeah.
And understanding it gives you a deeper insight into the forces that shape our lives.
It really is mind-blowing when you think about it. We've come a long way from bartering for goods to this intricate system of digital money creation.
It's a testament to human ingenuity and our constant drive to find new and more efficient ways to exchange value.
It makes you wonder, though, doesn't it? If our entire system is built on debt, what does that mean for the long-term stability of the economy?
That's the big question. Is this the most optimal system? Are there ways to refine it to ensure greater fairness and sustainability?
Those are questions we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into the world of finance and economics.
And we encourage you to explore them too. The more we understand how money works, the better equipped we are to navigate the complexities of the modern world.
So keep those questions in mind, listeners, as we wrap up this deep dive.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. For more detail you can visit our blog website www.evergreentechtips.com.